everybody, Sarah with you today for Technique Tuesday. This month we are focusing on sewing. And I know Jessica has already posted tons of tutorials on all kinds of different embroidery type of stitches you can learn and use. So what I thought I would focus on today is the upcoming cherry box for September has a sewing theme. You even get a little embroidery needle and some embroidery floss. So I thought I would share with you guys some quick and easy ways to add some stitching detail to your pattern papers that are included in the Bungalow Lane paper pad. And I wanted to focus on stitches and way to add some sewing that doesn't require a lot of know-how. I love to hand stitch, but I am not very good at it. I have never done embroidery. I'm terrible with a sewing machine. So I really wanted to focus on how you can add little pops of stitching to your projects using the upcoming September cherry box, or if you have Bungalow Lane products still in your stash. I have my embroidery needle, the thread that came in, that is coming in the September cherry box, but then I also have some just white embroidery thread. I like DMC, and I pulled the little sticker off this, but when I'm done embroidering today, when I'm done adding embroidery, I'll show you how to kind of wrap this around so it doesn't get too tangled. The other thing you're going to need for any of the stitching projects I'm going to show you is you're going to go ahead and need a foam mat. Now, it doesn't matter what this is. It can be the foam out of your Misty if you have one. It can be a mouse pad. I used a mouse pad for years and years to do what I'm going to show you today, but you need some sort of thickish pad. And then here are the 4 papers I'm going to be demonstrating for you today. So these are 4 papers from the Bungalow Lane collection. I'm going to be showing you how you can take the designs that are already on these papers and just add a little bit of stitching detail to them, and then we can create layouts over top, which I will be doing over on my channel this coming weekend. So let's start with this page. You can see here, I'm going to zoom this in so you can really see the pattern. You see how this pattern kind of already has these little marks on them. So I'm going to place the paper down on my pad. I'm going to grab this little sewing needle. Does this have to be a sewing needle? No. If you have a paper piercer, hold on, I'm going to show you what else you can use. You can use your needle that comes, or if you have a paper piercer, this is from the Cherry on Top shop. This is the Honeybee Stamps die release tool. Anything like this. I'm going to use this for this because it will just save your hands. Now, I don't want to do this whole paper, so I am just going to do a couple of the pattern down here and a couple of the pattern up in the top left. And all I'm doing is I'm making 2 rows, 1 on each side, and I'm definitely watching. I don't want them to be too close together. If they can kind of follow the lines on my pattern, that's good, but not necessary. So I just want to make sure that I don't have these lines too close together. And what it looks like the best course of action would be is to actually put them kind of off where the darker color is, not where the lighter color is, because those are pretty close together. So I'm just going to continue on here and get a couple of holes punched where I know I want to stitch. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the embroidery thread off, and I'm giving myself, like an arm's width. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And then I'm going to split this embroidery thread into two. You don't have to. I do know how to cross stitch. My grandmother taught me how to cross stitch, and whenever she taught me, she just taught me you always split your embroidery floss in two. Now, maybe that's just an old-timey thing to do. Maybe it's a Depression era type of a thing. It's how her grandmother taught her to cross stitch, I suppose. And I did see at the beginning of this video that I don't know how to hand stitch, but I guess I do because I did do a lot of cross stitching as a child. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to split this 6 strands into 3 and 3. And then I'm going to wet my needle here. Again, this is like my old school grandma trick. And I'm going to thread my needle. And now I'm going to make a little knot in the back. Now the papers from Bungalow Lane are rather thin. So when I get done with all the stitching I want to do on here, I am going to back this paper with another sheet of white cardstock, which is going to help so that nothing gets caught. All the stitches will be on the back of the paper, and then I can go ahead and just back it with another sheet of white paper. It doesn't have to be cardstock. It can be whatever thin paper you have. So I'm coming up from the back, and I am just following those lines that are already printed on my paper. Super simple. Really easy. Just watch it. You don't do that. This is something that anybody can do. You don't need to be a good sewer. You don't have to have a lot of experience or anything like that. You can just go ahead and sew through. We are going to be, for all 4 of these papers I'm going to show you, we're going to be using the patterns that we have. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to use the patterns that are right there on the paper. And this will happen. Keep your little picker close by. I know that before, when I've done sewing before, I've had sewers tell me how to undo these knots, or how to prevent them from happening. But I always forget to do it. So if you're gonna comment now how to put, like put the wax on the string and that kind of thing, I know, it's my own fault. Because I'm always too impatient and I don't take the time to do it. This is an impatient sewing guide. And then for this last stitch, I kind of went over and went through this last hole twice, and that's okay. You can kind of see how I did that. Then we're gonna flip it over, cut that. Now grab yourself some washi tape. Washi tape is like your best friend when you're sewing on paper. pull these ends down and just cover them up. Push it down real good. So you want a good sticky washi tape. You don't want a purple tape or anything like that. And then continue on. You can go ahead and do as many of these as you want. I'm going to continue on here. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do some across the top. Pull off the branding strip. And then, like I said, just grab yourself a sheet of thin cardstock, stuff you have hanging around your scrapbook room. You know the stuff. It's not too thin. It's not really good for backing, for actually using as a background. Maybe you got it for like super sale at Michael's or something. And then all you want to do is take your favorite adhesive, kind of line it up. And then on the back, what you will have done is you will have covered up all the stitching. You will cover up the washi tape, and then you're also going to give your page, your finished page, some stability. This also allows you to go ahead and do a whole bunch of stitching on a whole bunch of papers and set them aside to be for later use, for scrapbooking later on. Okay, let's go to our next pattern because I want to show you all 4 of these and how we can go ahead and add stitching to already printed patterns. Also, as an aside, if you want to keep your embroidery thread nice and tidy, but you are like me and you don't have bobbins or, you know, really good embroidery organization, get yourself a piece of cardstock and some purple tape or Post-it tape that you can pick up and put down, and just wrap it around. So these two are 2 that are already separated, ready to go. This is the full 6 strands, and then I have the Post-it tape. So when I'm ready, I can just pull the Post-it tape off, move it around, get what I need, and then use this to tack the edges down. This is just a no purchase hack. A way to keep the embroidery thread together, keep it from getting too tangled, too messy, and have it available to you when you feel like you want to stitch a little bit. Okay, so the second thing I'm going to show you is really similar to the yellow piece of paper. But with the yellow, we were doing, you know, like a section down here. We were kind of going to make a diagonal design across the page. For this one, I wanted you to take a look at all the different colors on this paper. So it's lots of the colors that are in the Bungalow Lane collection. One of the embroidery threads that come is this pretty orange color. So my idea is to take all of these orange stars and fill them in completely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did with the yellow paper, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by hitting all the tips of the, let's get that in just a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to start by using all the tips around the star. And then what I want to do is I want to come around, and remember, we don't want these to be super close together. We need some space for our thread, but you also want to make sure you're hitting some of the angles, right? We want to make sure we're hitting all the angles of our star so that when we're done, this will still look like a star. So same thing as before, start from above the paper. I'm starting down 1, so down from one of the stars, one of the tips. And the reason I'm doing this is because the tips are going to have to be done. You're only going to have one hole there, right? So you're going to have to do the tips by coming up from the bottom of the tip of the star and then coming back down into one of the holes you've already punched. Then you want to come up from the back and come back down into that tip. And that's going to fill in the tip of your star. So you can see, that makes sure we have a definite tip. Can I say tip 100 times? And then what you want to do is just follow the lines that are already in our star pattern papers. And we can come over. And now once you have the top done, the rest of this is really simple to do. Just gonna come up. Ooh. And down. And once you've stitched over your heart, hold on, let me find it. There it is. Just flip it over and use that same whatever washi tape you want to kind of hold the extra threads in place and to actually just kind of cover up where the stitching is. And then what you can do is you can go over this whole paper and you can have that bit of stitch detail to all the orange hearts, just the orange ones. And then you can build your layout over the top of that. The next idea I have for you is similar to the one, to the last one, in that it is color on color. Well, these are all kind of similar to each other, but my idea for this one is a little bit different. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at this pattern and I'm gonna find all the green areas. Let me pull this in a little bit so you can see. I'm gonna find all the green areas. I'm gonna use my little pokey tool. And I'm gonna poke holes just around the edges of just the green ones. And while it would work best if it was even, it doesn't need to be. Don't get too precious with these backgrounds because, again, these are backgrounds. And for this purpose, our idea, the thing we're trying to go for here is to add some stitching detail. But again, the focus of our finished layout will be our photos, our journaling. This is just a fun little addition. And remember that if you mess up something and you don't like the way it looks, just cover it up with a sticker or an embellishment or ephemera or whatever and done. Not hard at all, but just something fun and different. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go down one and I'm pretty much going to do a straight back stitch. Of course, it helps if your knot at the bottom is thick enough to actually hold. So let's start that again. See what I mean? Like, this is by no means a perfect kind of thing. And the other thing that we can do is we can hold it with a washi tape. Washi tape is sewing's best friend. Sewing on papers, hand stitching on papers, best friend. The papers in this pad are quite thin, so definitely be a little bit gentle. As I've continued to stitch these backgrounds, I have noticed that the papers want to rip. And that's why I encourage you to go ahead and make sure that you back this whole page when you're done stitching with a thin sheet of white cardstock, and that you also use a washi tape or something to cover over the loose threads in the background. And that's why I made sure to show you about the washi tape and covering the entire back of your paper with a thinner piece of cardstock and washi tape and all that, because I know that the paper is very thin and it's going to want to tear. If you are working with a thicker piece of paper, then you probably could skip most of the stability tips and tricks I've shared with you. But for these papers, you're going to definitely need to add a lot of extra stability to the back before you use your finished background. So I'm just doing a tone-on-tone green. You can kind of see how that looks with the back stitch. And then you can just go through the entire pattern papers. So like this we can back in green, this we can outline in green, this one we can outline in green, this one we could probably outline in green. You just want to enhance some of your pattern. You don't have to enhance it all. You certainly could. You could come in with all kinds of different stitches and do them. Again, though, make sure when you're using this paper pad that you are adding stability to the back. That's the most important thing. The last pattern paper in this paper pad collection is this really kind of busy quilt one. And I thought that it would be super fun to stitch the inside of these quilt blocks with white. White is going to pop it a little bit. Now, I'm not going to stitch every quilt block here, but I'm going to stitch most of them, because I'm pretty sure that if you stitched the outside ones and then left the inside one plain, and then when you created your layout, you put the photo and you could add some embellishments here and a title, and you'd pretty much be done. Like the stitching would be like the biggest part. So one more time, let's do it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the little pokey tool. I'm gonna poke myself some holes. I'm gonna keep these holes fairly apart. My reason for doing this is because the more I've worked with this paper, the more I've discovered how truly thin it is, and the more I have discovered how much it needs a bit of help for you to be able to stitch on it successfully. So I'm just going to come around here. Make sure you get your corners. Those are very important. You want to make sure you punch a hole in the corners. I kind of lost my square here. My idea is just to stitch in the insides of the blocks and to just stitch the squares. So I am not going to stitch each individual color. That would just be really cool, but also pretty time consuming. And I'm trying to keep this to things that, if you are a Cherry Box subscriber and you have not done a lot with stitching, we're gonna do I'm going for some pretty kind of easy things. And then what I'm doing is just that same back stitch. I'm just gonna do a couple stitches here for you to see. And you can almost tell immediately by adding the white stitching. You could, if you don't have a white thread, white embroidery thread, you can use any of the colors that come in the September Cherry Box and use them, and that would work out just fine. I just happen to have white embroidery floss, And you can kind of almost see immediately how that reinforces the squares and the design on the quilts that are printed on the paper. And again, I can't say this enough, make sure that when you are done stitching, you tack down your threads with some washi tape and then back the whole paper with some cardstock. Those are key things that you're gonna need for this. You can kind of see right away. I'm just gonna pull this a little bit taut, show it to you. You can see how that's gonna look all finished. Super cute. So I am gonna go ahead and just keep stitching away on all these patterns. And on Saturday, there will be a video on my channel and a blog post on a cherry on top showing at least 1 or 2 ways that I've used these stitched backgrounds. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I'll see you later. Bye.